Wow. Here we are finally. Season 4 of Rock and Roll Show and Tell. It's a podcast with me talking about stuff. Talking about stuff like rock and roll. And I don't mean, talking about the art of rock and roll or talking about the lifestyle and the commitment to a life of rock and roll. Now it's probably means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but rather than go into that and try to define it, I'll just talk about my experience because I didn't really realize for the longest time how unique my experience was. I thought everybody could do this if they wanted to, and but it wasn't even that conscious. I discovered music. I can't remember my life without it. My mother played piano. There was a baby grand piano in the foyer. I used to sit on the pedals and rumble all the lowest notes and then put my head against the soundboard and listen to the vibrations. So that's a partial excuse for how I wound up here. But where is here? Well, here today is in the control room of my recording studio. I don't have a 747 commercial airliner. I have a G6 personal consumption, do what you need to do studio, and I love it here. And at present, as I'm doing this episode 1 of season 4, I'm in the process of doing the collection for Oxhumed, which is the John Entwistle Rarities collection, Oxhumed Volume 2. So there are, I'm in here doing that, listening to versions. And it's really weird because when you do a record like this, especially when your partner or your bandmate is no longer there to put in his extremely valuable input, you're kind of left on your own to fly on your own. And so there are different versions of songs. We're taking songs from the live tours, and I have live tours going back that for this particular project from 96 to 2001. So I'm trying to pick something from each era, but I'll have more than one performance, obviously, of the same song if we're doing, pick one. If we're doing, Cell Number 7, which we don't do, we never did. But if we're doing that, obviously it's going to sound different and we're going to perform it better or not as well or longer or funnier or louder tomorrow night than we did last night. That's just the nature of playing live. So the thing that's kind of tasking about this is you listen to a song, and especially if it's, one of the live at Leeds things, which I'm using some of the, I think I'll use, if I didn't use it already, it's hard for me to remember the track list from Volume 1, but probably Young Man Blues, because we had just some blistering versions of it, and we never did it the same way twice. It was always just, I'll see you out there, and we would just go. So the challenge here is, which version do I use? Do I use the one where we played our asses off, but it really didn't sound as good as the one where we sounded amazing, but we weren't quite hitting on the, hitting the thing out of the park? It's tough. And then you'll get a track that's 8, however many minutes long, 10 minutes long, and you'll listen to the whole thing and you'll be for sure this is the one I got to use. And all of a sudden you'll hear or some other obnoxious thing that says, or somebody hits like a amazing mistake or breaks a string. So that's an interesting part of what, what I'm doing today or in my musical universe. But the musical universe, man, I mean, if you're a part of it, you already know it. It doesn't mean that you're that you have your wings, but if you're part of it, um, you already know. When I was in elementary school, kindergarten, I went to oh, wow, what was it? Mamaroneck Avenue School, which is an elementary school in White Plains, New York, and we were going to have the high school band come to play for an assembly in our auditorium. So it was all, and this was kindergarten through sixth grade, and before you went off to junior high school. And so I had not heard live music before. I had heard plenty of music in my house. There was always my mother was playing piano, my mother or my brother were playing records, or there was something maybe that had music on the TV. But there was always music in my house, and so that seemed pretty normal to me. Um, I mean, I didn't really think about, wow, does everybody have this or does everybody not have this? It's just, it was always there. And as I look back um, over the years at the things that I did or the things that I heard or were a part, whatever it is, I can see how all the pieces of it fit together and how amazingly destined it was to be. So going back to this elementary school thing, the high school band comes, and it's the first time that I hear music in a live room with that, and what a high school or a school auditorium sounds like. It has that big, echoey, huge sound, the ambient sound. And if you're sitting in the back, which we were kindergartners, so we got you know, we were in the peanut gallery. You really got the benefit of that amazing reverb. So the band is tuning up, which I had never heard before. And when you hear it in a movie, it's that thing where everybody's getting their violin or their cello or whatever in tune. And this happened to be the band. Like there's the orchestra, which is a lot softer sounding, I think. And then there's the band, which has a lot more brass and is a lot more attack. So this was the high school band. Anyway, short story short, then it could be very long. But the short story is, the minute the drums started playing, I turned to my friend Janice, who was sitting right next to me, and I said to her, I don't even know why, I said, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I never thought about it again. And Janice, as it turns out, I'm now in Southwest Florida, and so is Janice. She's down another half hour from us in Naples, and so we see her. And we do have the internet, so obviously you're in touch with everybody. But she came to an event that I was doing, and we talked, and she reminded me of that day. And she said, from that day on, I was walking around with a pair of drumsticks in my pocket. Now, this is, you know, primary school, kindergarten, first grade. I mean, that was it. So in my school, back then, you couldn't sign up for lessons. You couldn't be in the band or get lessons until you were in fourth grade. So, and the time can't go quick enough. Now, I got the drum set, that we all get when we decide we want to hit things with a stick as children, and I got that for Christmas. And I did a Keith Moon on that very quickly. None of this is planned. It's just the way it happens. It's like, hit record and watch. And so from that point on, I was hooked. I hit anything that would make a sound with anything that would make it make a sound. So I used, my mother had like a tea setup, and I used the tray as the gong and the spoons as sticks and the sugar holder and the other thing, the creamer. And I went nuts. Go figure, right? But the point of it is, I loved it. It wasn't that I was destroying silverware or being mischievous. It was this cerebral thing that happened that I, inside of me, I already knew I needed to be doing this, and this was my first opportunity to actually do it. Besides smashing up the cowboy set, the Christmas set. So, I now, I think my mother, the following Christmas or maybe the Christmas after that, I got a snare drum and a hi hat because lucky for me, my mother's sister was dating a guy who happened to be the chief of the New York Fire Department at the time, but he was also a big band leader. So, and he would eventually be my uncle. So he was a big band leader because he was the drummer. So in the beginning, it's cute that Stephen wants to play drums, and we'll go see this, and Uncle Bert will tell him what he needs to know. So anyway, I get a hi hat and a snare drum. This is what I now have. This is my drum set. I don't have a kick drum. I don't have any crash cymbals. I have a hi hat, which is the thing that opens and closes with your left foot if you're righty, or your right foot if you're lefty, or any foot if you're Billy Cobham. And I have to make this work. So I do. I mean, no matter what, I've got sticks, I have a skin and some brass stuff. Let's get started. So I go through it and I start playing, and I'm of course bothering my mother. I need a bass drum. I need this, and so eventually I wound up getting um, the rest of what would be my first kit. The problem was we lived in garden apartments, and they frowned on drumming from the neighbors. And of course, I would tell my mother, "Oh, don't worry, I won't play while you're at work." So we got evicted from there. um, but it was always a part of my life. And the odd thing was that about the same time that I was discovering music, my friend was discovering or had already discovered music because he was playing accordion, and that was his instrument. So you got a hi hat, a snare drum, and an accordion. But that's where it started. Now, mine started with records, and you are the first music that you hear, or that back in the time that you hear is whatever your friends or your family has. Well, my mother had big band stuff and some Broadway stuff. Um, West Side Story was just huge for me. It's the first time I ever heard a curse word on a record, which I had to play that 100 times. But the scale, the tritone scale that they used to do the music, the syncopation, the dance, the whole thing of that entire production just got to me. And it's odd because later in life I would go on to know some of the people that were involved in that. But it stuck with me, as so did Sergio Mendes and Brazil '66, which was my brother's time. He was, I guess, an Elvis, guy, but he didn't want to be that obvious, so he was digging Johnny Mathis and Brazil '66, and I don't know, So there was that stuff. So I enjoyed the big band stuff, my mother's stuff, more because the drums were so important. Anything that the band did, it did along with the drummer, or the drummer did it along with the band. Either way, you could feel the connection between those two things. And when I would see that, or when I would hear it, it would be like, wow, how, I need to do that. So we meet another friend, and this is still, first years of elementary school. Meet another friend, actually, he's a neighbor of mine in the building that I was living in. This is before we got evicted. We're going pre-eviction here. This 19 whatever it is, pre-eviction. And my other neighbor, was a trumpet player. He had a trumpet, and he, you know, I mean, that's pretty cool. And his dad, as it turned out, was a jazz musician, um, and he was a pro. And if you know what that means back in the late 50s, it's a pretty cool thing. So here we are. We've got an accordion, a snare drum, hi hat, and a trumpet, and but we need a name. So we get a name, and I imagine that his dad helped us come up with the name because all of a sudden one day, and it's weird when you're in a band, like one day you're nothing, and then the next day something happens, and it's like, oh, okay, we're that now. And so one day we were the Continentals. Now this is going back. This is pre-Beatles. This is back. This is back. This is when playing at a junior high school party for me was like playing the garden. Um, but what do you play when that's your when that's your instrumentation? It's not easy. So I don't remember the whole playlist. I do know that we did the Saints Go Marching In, and we had a an original song which blows my mind that we called the Continental Theme, and I guess it was based on some kind of a I wouldn't know it unless you played it for me and told me what it was, but it was probably based on some jazz formation that Jan's dad passed down to him, and Dave and I learned it, and we made a song out of it. And I can't even imagine what else we were playing. I don't even know what was out at the time. Probably we were very much into Motown, so it could have been that too. But it's weird where your musical influences come from, and so from the Continentals, which I guess is what you would call the first band, um, you're not thinking about money. You're not really thinking about girls if you're as young as I was. I mean, I always thinking about girls, but it's not. This is like you've discovered something and you're not sure whether to tell anybody else about it or not because it's pretty freaking cool. But you don't even. It's you. For me, I had to do this thing. It was like I don't know, whatever the thing is that you have to do. You have to have that slice of pizza, or you have to kiss that girl, or you have to drive that car, or you have to whatever it is. It's this innate thing. I had to play drums. I had to do it. And what I found was that I had to do it with other people because drums, especially drums, are very communicative. Lucky I said that without breaking my lip. In other words, I mean, it's a language. It's how they communicated over long distances, very very long ago in the jungle and whatever. And believe me, I'm not a historian. I beat things with a stick, but I can relate to the guys who did it a long time ago. And it's trust me, it's a lot easier to be heard banging on a log with a skin over it than it is screaming. I don't even know if they had language when they were banging on these things. Anyway, so we're getting way off the track, but that's life in the dressing room. But we're in the control room. So anyway, um, the thing about it is, I loved playing, and over the years, there was after the Continentals, there was one band that I played with called the Denim Blues, and I didn't really know these guys, but I was a lot younger than they were. They were 14, 15, maybe 16, and I was 12, 11 or 12. So it was I was good enough to play with them, but I was a little too young, so it didn't last very long. And then after that, things all circled back around to oh, back to the balance of music with Jan, Dave, and who we started to play with different people. Um, we started thinking about a name. We called ourselves all kinds of different things. By this time, the Beatles had happened, so um, we called ourselves the Bugs. We called ourselves the Tottenhams, which I actually thought was a cool name. If you're trying to do the English vibe, and finally we became Rat Race Choir, and it stuck. and it stuck through all of the permutations. There were five of us in the beginning. Actually, there were four of us in the beginning. We didn't have Chris singing at the time, Chris Peck. We had Pepe Ficaretta, we had Dave Camilla, myself, and Chris Murphy, and that was the original band. And finally, Chris Murphy decided to. Oh no, it wasn't. No, I'm sorry, not Murphy. Pepe decided to move on, or his parents decided that he wanted to move on. But either way, he was not in the band. He didn't make it out of '68. But Larry McGowan was coming along and was learning the tracks, learning the set. He would come and watch us play and so on and so. And there was no, it wasn't a weird thing. Pepe couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't working out. It wasn't, so you had to make a change. And Larry came to the shows and was, part of the whole night. He wasn't playing, but he was watching the catalog and learning what we did and seeing who we were. And then eventually he replaced Pepe, and we went into that was the band that first went into the studio in '68 and '69, I think it was, at Warner Brothers. And but the point of it isn't. I mean, it isn't all of the milestones. The first time you record at Warner Brothers in the Brill Building, that's I don't even think at the age that we were when we did that we had any idea what those things even were. I mean, if you look up the Brill Building in Wikipedia, it's uh, it's one of the iconic temples of music. But when you're 15, 16 years old and a guy says, I can sneak you into Warner Brothers for the weekend, you go. You don't ask, what is this? And, obviously you find out over time, but it's really strange because you're so caught up in doing it and being it. And you're not being, I mean, you are it. It's happening. It's not like I'm going to get up and do this today. It's all there is. It's the minute you go to sleep and the minute you wake up and all day long. And if you're lucky enough to get to the point where it really is that way, that it really is every day, all day, and it's the way it's always been for me. It once it started, it was every day, all day. It's the way my life is, and the way um, I choose to live my life is based on my ability to play or do whatever it is I choose to do creatively. So that's that's a luxury that you don't even realize you have until you look back over the landscape of your career and say, "Wow." Because I never had a job. I didn't like work at the post office or at the deli. I was in a band. And I was in a band at the time where if you were in a band, you were the weird guy. You were that guy. You were like, he's in a band. It was when they were first, the high schoolers and everybody was first finding out about weed. Ooh. Then being in a band was not so bad. But anyway, that's uh, it's a long time ago, and it's funny because I never think about. I don't go to the high school reunions. Obviously, that would be an interesting thing to do, but I never realized how unique our community was until not until I left it, because I never left it, but until I moved to Florida. In New York, it's so easy to find clusters and communities of other musicians that you get to live in that universe. It's a little bit more by a schedule, but it's not quite the same as being in a band and waking up and going to sleep every day and playing gigs, that thing. But you're still in that universe. You're in you're in Manhattan. You're in the center of the universe. You can call up anybody at any time and say, "Let's play," and play. That's not the way it is down here. Um, And it's not that those people aren't here, but there's not thousands of them. This is, a lot of people come. You know why people come down to Florida. I'm not going to rag anybody. It's nice down here, and it's warm, Anyway, so, But the thing that I discovered too about moving to Florida is as long as there's a cell phone and an airport and some internet, I'm good. I don't have to be in one place. I was in a band where my bass player lived in another country. So that was interesting. And the phone bills were sweet. But I don't know, man. I guess the thing, I was talking to my cousin Debbie today, and she said, I always remember you reinventing yourself and reinventing yourself. And the thing about that is if you want to stay in this business and you're not lucky enough to be Elton John or Rod Stewart or one of those guys with a lifelong career that, spans from your teens and you're still doing it. If you're not one of those guys, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to say, yeah, I can do that, whether you can do it or not. And then by the time it's time to do it, you better know how to do it. And not only better you know how to do it, I'm not going to check that grammar. You better know how to do it better than anybody else in the room. So don't say it if you can't do it. But I always say it. It's just part of what it is for me. So I've got this album. I'm happy about doing that. I'm driving myself nuts about the sound, and I have the new band. I don't know if you're new to the whole rock and roll show and tell universe, then you may or may not know that I put a new band together in addition to all the other ones that I've had, even up to COVID. This is a brand new one. This is a post-COVID project. So. And we just got we just scheduled a bunch of shows. Our first show is going to be in Cape Coral. And, I'll drop the details. I don't want to turn this into a PSA. But the point, I guess, of this whole episode list, this whole season, is the reality of what this life really is. And as I said, until we moved to Florida and everything changed, and this is after Aunt Whistle passed away and a lot of stuff happened. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to stay needed. If nobody needs you, you can be the best at anything, and nobody needs you. Now, there's another part of that too. They have to know that they need you. In other words, they need to know that you're there. You can't just sit there and wait for somebody to come and say, oh, wow, I didn't know how much I needed you. You have to be out there doing it. Steve Stevens, I was talking to him a while back, and he said, you just say yes to everything. Yeah. You want to do this? Yeah, sure. You want to play on the theme to Top Gun? What's Top Gun? It's a movie. Yeah, sure. How about you get a Grammy for that? But that's the kind of surreal opportunities and, destiny kind of things that happen. It's a great business. And if there's a point to this first episode, it is that it's not for everybody. It may look like it is, and the fun part is, but it's not just the fun part. It's the whole thing. And a lot of people get in this for the wrong reason, or by mistake or whatever. And in this life, the life that I know and the life that my friends know can kill you. And I mean that, but it can kill you in a number of ways. Anyway, this was, wow, my half hour's almost up. This is weird, but to be continued, right? I mean, I'm going to try to do one of these every week and make season 4 all about the wonders of rock and roll. So that's going to do it for me, and I'll keep you posted on things, and I'll see you out there.